Imagine being born underground, never seeing the sky, spending every day digging through dirt and rock with a handheld drill because that's all you've ever known. Earthquakes steal your parents, the ceiling above you might as well be the end of the universe. And still, you wonder what's up there, more rock or something more. Then one day, you find it, a tiny mecha, and after years of clawing your way through darkness, you finally break through. And what's waiting for you isn't more stone, but an endless sky. A sky so massive, so wide open, your old life starts to feel like a joke. Because for the first time you realize there's no limit to what's out there. That's not just the first episode of any anime. That is the first episode of Gurren Lagann. A few months ago, I dropped a video about any manga burnout and how to deal with it. And to be completely honest with you, that might be the worst video I've ever made. I cannot stand looking at this video, bro. Picture this, a dude struggling to watch Japanese cartoons and read comic books, trying to give advice on how to stop being burnt out from Japanese cartoons and comic books. Just look at this guy, absolute fucking clown. How do you watch this absolute loser? Weird way to kick off a video about Gurren Lagann verbally assaulting myself, I know, but I need to set the stage because before I watched Gurren Lagann, I was in a pretty dark place. I'd just withdrawn from a college class back in the summer of last year. The pressure of college was just crushing me, and on top of that, I was knee deep in actual depression. Making videos felt impossible, even enjoying stories felt like a chore. The tank was empty. In my previous video coming back, I talked about a few series that helped me come back to anime and YouTube altogether, but the one series I barely touched on in that video, the one that quietly rebuilt my fire and possibly my favorite anime as of this moment, was Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann. And honestly, I don't even know where to start with this show. From the very first episode, I was hooked. You got people forced to live underground, digging away their lives with no idea what the surface even looks like. Then, BAM! A giant mecha crashes straight into their village. It grabs you instantly. Why are they underground? Who built these gunmen? What the hell is going on? And just when Simone and Kamina finally break through the surface, finally breathe in that open sky, they realize the nightmare's just begun. There are tons of these gunmen out there. They're everywhere. No one knows why except Beastmen pilot them. It's like they open Pandora's box with a drill. And now we, the audience, are digging for answers right along with them. And speaking of Simone and Kamina, these two, easily one of the most lovable duos in anime. Full stop. From their humble beginnings in Giha village to piloting Gurren Lagann together, their bond is raw, real, and incredibly hype. It's brotherhood built on shared struggle, stupid courage, and yelling until reality itself bends in your favor. Their dynamic doesn't just carry the story, it amplifies it. They embody the show's core, hope, belief in others, and pushing forward even when everything feels impossible. This also manages to bring forth genuine funny interactions between them and the rest of the cast. I gotta take a second to shout out the studio behind Gurren Lagann, Studio Gainax. Yeah, the same folks responsible for Neon Genesis Evangelion, which I swear I'll watch one day once I emotionally prepare myself. But with Gurren Lagann, Gainax was on one. The art and animation are consistently stellar throughout the entire show, but episodes 2 and 3, that's when I realized I wasn't just watching another anime, I was witnessing an entire statement. There's this moment when Kamina steals the gunman Gurren to try and even the immensely unfair playing field, ends up face to face with a human skull, and you see him physically wrestle with fear. One of the rare moments where we see vulnerability from the fearless Kamina. But of course, Kamina rises to the occasion and then drop kicks both enemy mechas in such a satisfying fashion. He fakes them out, throwing Simone toward them, and when it seems like Kamina missed, Simone digs his way back around, destroying them when their guard is completely down. It was unhinged in the best way possible. Then, episode 3. Enter Viral, a shark beastman who tells us he's part of the human eradication forces. His whole job is to wipe out any human who dares reach the surface. Suddenly, all that pointless underground digging has a horrifying context. The fight between Kamina and Viral is just chef's kiss. The choreography, the raw physicality, the scale, it all ramps up compared to the smaller skirmishes in episode 2. You feel the danger now. Stakes are real. The tension between a scared Simone and Yoko is very real. And then the moment. Simone and Kamina combine for the very first time to form Gurren Lagann. That shot, that "who the hell do you think I am" from Kamina, that "to hell with your Kambai" soundtrack by Taku Iwasaki blasting in the background, goosebumps, actual full body goosebumps. That was the moment I knew I'm in this until the very end. Absolute masterpiece of a moment, but somehow, some way, it kept getting better. Every single time they transformed, the hype dialed up another notch. The fights got more chaotic, more intense, gunmen straight up throwing hands, explosions got bigger, stakes got heavier, and the enemies, they just kept getting larger. The first 7 episodes of Gurren Lagann aren't just exciting, they're an escalating crescendo. Each episode builds not only the conflict between Team Gurren, soon to be Team Daiguren and the Beastmen, but also the deeper question of what kind of world they're even fighting for. What is this planet? Who made the rules? And why the hell are humans stuck underground while mechas patrol the surface? At the center of all this is Kamina. He doesn't just bring his inspiring energy, he sets the thematic foundation of Gurren Lagann. To Simone, Kamina isn't just a brother figure, he's everything Simone wishes he could be. Confident, fearless, and alive. But the brilliance of Gurren Lagann is how it shows Simone's admiration becoming a crutch. Take episode 6 for example. Yeah, it's filled to the absolute brim with fan service and hot spring craziness, but there's a quiet, vulnerable moment that really stuck out to me despite all of that. Simone's drilling, trying to pick through the other side, and he overhears Yoko and Kitan's sisters. They call him an unreliable little kid, too attached to Kamina to stand on his own. And that hurts, because by this point, we know Simone's got feelings for Yoko, but then Yoko says something important. If he works hard, if he grows, he can become a great man. Because no matter how scared or uncertain he is, Simone always pulls through when it counts. Because of this, episode 6 and 7 hit different in hindsight. They're funny and entertaining, sure, but there's a dark cloud creeping in. By episode 7, the stakes are higher than ever. Team Gurren is up against a full-blown battleship and an army of beastmen. The world knows about Gurren Lagann now. Humans see it as an opportunity to change their fate, and beastmen see it as a threat to the status quo. In Kamina, he feels that pressure. You can see it in how recklessly he fights here, how little he slows down. He's trying to lead, trying to embody everything Simone believes in, but that weight is crushing him. And ironically enough, it's Simone who steps up. He's the one who buys them time. He's the one who helps them regroup and fully become Team Daiguren. The table's set. The stakes couldn't be higher, and I was so ready for what was coming next. But what I ended up receiving was a tragedy. Now, to be fully transparent, I knew Kamina was going to die. What I didn't know was when, and that made episode 8 feel off from the very start. Last episode, we see Simone blush around Yoko, clear signs of his feelings. So when this one opens with her handing him a hot drink and almost saying something, but then pulling back and saying forget it, I thought, that's strange. And shortly after, she walks over to Kamina. Same setup, she gives him a drink, they exchange a few words, and then BAM! I was stunned. Not because Yoko had feelings for Kamina, this is something that was building up for a little while. In episode 6, she even slips up saying that she's willing to show herself to him. But I was shocked it happened now. Right here, right before their biggest battle yet. Even though it wasn't necessarily her fault, watching this, all I could feel was bad for Simone here. The girl he clearly likes has feelings for the person he idolizes. It's heartbreak from multiple angles, romantic, emotional, and I would dare say even existential here. But it's okay, I thought to myself. At least he isn't there to witness this very intimate moment between Yoko and Kamina, having a chance to properly digest those complicated feelings after such an important battle for the possession of Daigunzan. There's absolutely no way Simon is going to fight these feelings of love, jealousy, and doubt in their biggest fight of their lives at this point, right? Oh fuck, dude. Everything clicked here. This is when I knew I wasn't going to have a fun time. If I had to describe my experience with this episode in one word, would be dread. As much as Kamina is beloved, this was never his story. It's always been Simon's. And that's what makes this episode hit so hard. Watching Simon spiral into emotional turmoil, not just from unrequited love, but from the overwhelming pressure of the moment, it's heartbreaking. He shouldn't have to go through all this. Not now. Not when the stakes are this high, but this is the hand he was dealt. And so the battle begins. At first, it seems like things are going to go well, but when Simon fails to combine with the battleship, everything crashes. His emotions are completely shot, and of course they are. How could they not be? Then Kamina, in one of the rawest moments of the entire show, leaves Gurren, walks up to Simon, tells him grit those teeth, and just decks him extremely hard. That punch was more than just trying to bring Simon back into the battle. It was Kamina's effort to hold everything together. And it works. For a second, it works. But it costs him. Leaving himself open to get through to Simon meant dropping his guard. And the world of Gurren Lagann doesn't forgive him for this very big decision. He gets hit by Thymilf hard, brutally, and visibly. He gets tag team with Viral as well. And for the first time, everyone, including us watching, see Kamina fall. The unshakable symbol of hope is suddenly broken. As the ship barrels toward the volcano and panic sets in, I sat there, breath held, not just for the fate of the team, but because deep down I knew this was it for Kamina. But even in the middle of that despair, Kamina pulls Simon back into the fight again with a goddamn punch, this time from inside Gurren. Simon finally pulls it together and combines with Daigunzan. He also, for the final time, combines with Kamina, and they unleash the first ever Giga Drill break and take down Thymilf. A phenomenal finish. The biggest victory for Gurren, but at what cost?
アバよ、ダチコ。
兄貴？兄貴？
There always comes a time in life where it's make or break. I knew Kamina was going to die, but I did not know it would happen this early. This was episode 8. There were still 19 episodes left, 18 if you skip the recap, so the question was screaming at me. How the hell does the story go on without him? Simon? A complete wreck. He is so unbelievably unreliable in comparison to when Kamina was around. Yoko? Devastated. The promise Kamina made, I'll make up for that kiss 10 times over, shattered in an instant. Team Gurren, Kitan tries his best to fill in the massive shoes Kamina left behind, but they're still surrounded by enemies like the remaining generals in this Spiral King. How in the absolute fuck would they be able to survive now their biggest ray of hope was gone? The man who pulled them from the dirt literally is now buried beneath it. Simon's grief, his spiral into depression, that dark, moody, quiet version of him, I saw myself in it. Even worse, I've lived that way myself for years. Everything felt hopeless. Why keep going? Enter Nia, easily one of the most important characters in the series. She's not just Simon's bridge to healing, She's the link between pre and post timeskip Gurren Lagann. Her personality is gentle but direct, and when she starts asking question after being rescued in a box abandoned on the surface, it puts Simon face to face with the doubt he's been drowning in. Kamina isn't there to talk through it anymore. And as insensitive as it might have sounded, Nia hit him with the cold truth. He's not Kamina. He can't rely on Kamina. He has to be his own person, but that doesn't mean it's easy. Simon believed in himself because Kamina believed in him. That story he tells about almost being trapped under dirt and Kamina motivating him to keep going for their survival, that is Simon's entire emotional foundation. Now, that foundation is gone. But here's the twist. We learned that Nia is the Spiral King's discarded daughter, thrown away like trash simply for questioning her own existence. She was cast out for her self-awareness, a trait the Spiral King despises. The group accepts her right away after finding this out, except Yoko, who's still sour over Nia's bluntness. As we see at the end invade the second time and try to kill Nia, despite being lost in grief, Simon is the first to run toward her unarmed without Lagann, which he can't even pilot anymore. That scene when he is digging dozens of Kamina statues in his room, he's stuck, completely consumed by grief. And yet Nia is the one who sits beside him while everyone else looks at him with disgust. She doesn't even flinch. She sees him, even in his worst moment. And ironically enough, that's what Kamina did too. She's the only one who treats Simon like he's still worth something, not because of who he used to be or who Kamina wanted him to become, but because of who he is right now. Then Guam enters the picture. He traps Team Daiguren. Lagann is literally in a junk pile and morale is gone. It's over. No one believes in Simon anymore, except Nia. She stands tall, looks Guam dead in the face, and says Simon will defeat him. And then you see everyone digging, trying to escape execution, but they are unable to even leave a dent to the wall. And then that sound. Everyone sees his back, and you see it, Simon digging. Just like back then, just like in his story. But here's the truth. It wasn't Kamina who saved Simon. It was Simon's own strength that brought him back to the village. That same strength, it's what gave Kamina the will to keep going. Kamina didn't believe in himself. He believed in Simon. And now we realize what Kamina's most famous words really meant. Believe in the Kamina who believes in you. But more importantly, his last words, have faith in the Simon who believes in you. Simon was always the heart of Gurren Lagann. We just didn't realize it. And in one of the best moments in the entire series, he takes back Lagann just like he found it in episode 1. He saves Nia with the world watching, and this time he doesn't say he's Kamina's brother or that he's trying to be him. He doesn't hide behind that anymore. He says, I'm Simon, Simon the Digger. That moment, that is one of the greatest character arcs I have ever seen. It's not even that long in terms of runtime, but the emotional payoff is the biggest I've ever seen within that short time. Every minute of Simon's grief and self-doubt was used perfectly to bring him here. This was who he was meant to be from the very beginning. And so, Simon becomes the leader of Team Daiguren, and the battle against the remaining 3 generals and the Spiral King goes to a head. What makes this final stretch before the time skip so good isn't just the spectacle, it's the emotional development woven into every scene. We see Yoko and Nia finally begin to understand each other. Yoko, who once saw Nia's optimism as naivety, realizes just how deeply Nia trusts them, not just with her words, but with her life. That tension between them softens into respect. And then there's Viral. The moment he accepts that Kamina, the man who once beat him, is dead, and that the one who keeps defeating him is Simon, not Kamina's shadow, that hits. This isn't the same scared kid Simon from episode 1. Viral is forced to face a new reality. This human, the one who he overlooked, has grown into someone he can't overpower no matter how hard he tries. So much so that when Saitomander plays dirty in the middle of a battle between them, Viral refuses to join in. That's depth, that's growth. A Beastman following his own code now, not just orders. Meanwhile, Gurren Lagann itself is evolving too, both in power and in how it's used. Go back and watch Kamina vs Viral in episode 3. It looks like a schoolyard scrap compared to what we get now. The early battles, once the climax of entire episodes, now feel like warm-ups compared to the insane high-stakes fights against Adien, Saitomander, and Guam. And then, Teppelin. The long-awaited confrontation. Team Daiguren finally reaches the Spiral King, Lord Genome, and everything we've been speculating about the world's twisted state finally explodes into the spotlight. The fight between Gurren Lagann and Rasengan is less than an episode, but every single second is unforgettable. In the moment that absolutely had me speechless, Lord Genome jumps out of Rasengan and starts punching Lagann with his bare hands. I was losing my mind. It's brutal, primal, and absolutely legendary. Simon, against all odds, doesn't falter. With everything on the line, he uses his core drill to finally bring Lord Genome down. Victory! Finally, everything humanity has fought for against oppression, against despair is earned. But it's not over, because Lord Genome's last words aren't of defeat, they're a warning. When the population reaches 1 million, the moon will descend. Hell's messenger will awaken and Earth will be destroyed. It's chilling. Just like with Kamina's death after defeating Thymilf, the moment of victory is bittersweet because now we realize the truth. Lord Genome wasn't the final boss. He was just the gatekeeper of Earth. The real threat, it's still out there. Despite the looming threat Lord Genome warned about, despite the uncertainty hanging over their heads, time doesn't stop. Technology doesn't stop. Humanity moves forward. 7 years later, the heroes who once screamed into the heavens are now leaders in this new world. Team Daiguren has grown up. They're no longer rebels, they're the system. Rosyu especially comes into his own. From the shy kid in Idai village to a calm, efficient administrator, he's almost unrecognizable. Simon and Nia, their relationship is deeper than ever. They're talking about marriage now. It's surreal. Seeing humanity thriving on the surface, building cities, advancing society, it almost feels like we've stepped into a different anime. And a part of me wondered, how is this show going to keep its momentum and still feel like Gurren Lagann? How does it stay compelling now? Fortunately, I got my answer very quickly because every single episode from here on out is loaded with character work, dense with themes, explosive in payoff. This stretch, which what I like to call the Noah's Ark Dilemma, belongs to Rosyu. But before we dive into that, let's rewind for a second. Idai Village. Episode 5 has always stood out to me. It's totally different from the rest of the early episodes, and for good reason. It shows us a version of humanity that survives not through rebellion, but through submission and religion. The villagers worship the very gunmen, the enemy of humanity, as face gods, deities to revere. They've wrapped their own oppression in religion to make it feel like salvation. But here's the kicker. Every time the population hits 50, they hold a ceremony. Draw the marked stick, and you're chosen to go to the celestial lands. Except, we know the truth. The surface isn't heaven, it's a death sentence. The human eradication force doesn't wait with open arms. They're out there to kill anyone who rises up. So all these villagers, they've been sending people off to die over and over, thinking it's divine will. And Rosyu He grew up in that, not only being surrounded in that environment, but he also lost his mother because of it. He internalized that belief system that sacrifice equals survival. When Kamina confronts Magin, the village elder, and challenges this twisted system, the look he gives him is burned into my memory. Rosyu was there to witness all of that, and eventually he ended up leaving to join with Team Gurren. And I don't think he ever forgot any of this, because 7 years later, he becomes the one making those exact same choices. With all of that being said, the moment humanity's population hits 1 million, just as Lord Genome warned, all hell breaks loose. From the moment Simone rescued Nia before the time skip, her curious nature and complete lack of understanding about basic concepts always felt off. I always chalked it up to her sheltered upbringing as Lord Genome's daughter, but deep down, something didn't sit right. So when the twist hits, when it's revealed that Nia was actually a sleeper agent of the anti-spirals, Hell's messenger, just waiting to be activated at the 1,000,000 mark, my jaw hit the ground. It was hiding in plain sight the entire time. From there, things spiral into absolute chaos. Simon, who's always been the one to push forward no matter the odds, now finds himself completely powerless. His instinct to protect backfires catastrophically after the anti-spiral mecha explodes in the middle of the city. And then Nia appears on live television. Not the Nia we knew, but a cold detached figure delivering one of the most chilling lines in the entire show: the activation of the humanity extermination system. She stands in front of the moon declaring Earth's days are numbered, and for the first time in this series, I genuinely felt fear, but it gets even crazier. Thanks to Rosyu preserving Lord Genome's consciousness in a biocomputer, we get one of the most insane lore drops in the entire series. The Spiral King wasn't just a tyrant, he was a former warrior who fought in a cosmic war against the anti-spirals, a war he lost, leading him to suppress humanity's growth in order to protect them from annihilation. That changes everything. Suddenly, the Beastmen, the forced population control, the gunmen, it all reframes into a grim form of mercy. Lord Genome didn't rule to just dominate, he ruled to delay extinction. In his own twisted way, he was trying to save Earth. And now we learn about the anti-spirals, beings who exist beyond the heavens, wiping out any spiral life that dares to evolve, all to prevent something called the Spiral Nemesis, a universe-ending force triggered by unchecked spiral energy, which, by the way, Simon literally carries the symbol of on his core drill. Let that sink in for a second. Lagann, the machine Simon stumbled upon in episode 1, isn't just a quirky little robot, it's one of Lord Genome's most powerful weapons, and the fight that started this whole story, the one that felt like it was about reclaiming the surface, that fight accidentally relit the beacon that put Earth in the anti-spiral's crosshairs. Simon, still reeling, confronts Nia, who shows up, but the Nia standing before him now is no longer the person who once believed in him. Her anti-spiral programming has taken over, and she shows no remorse or recognition of who she used to be. So how are the anti-spirals planning to wipe out humanity? The moon. It's leaving orbit in 3 weeks, and it will be on a direct collision with Earth. Chills down my spine. But hey, at least this very shocking piece of information isn't being broadcasted on a national level and will be kept under wraps in order for a strategic plan to be made without dealing with mass panic and despair across the world. Right? Are you fucking kidding me? With all of that chaos set in motion, the backlash is absolutely insane. The world's rage doesn't just hit the new government, it slams straight into Simon. A man who once stood tall as a symbol of hope beside Kamina is now seen as the very reason humanity teeters on the edge of annihilation. And this time, it's not his inner resolve being tested, it's the collective judgment of the entire world, not because Simon lacks the will to push forward, but because his will, his unshakable belief in moving ahead no matter what, may have doomed everyone. The moon falling, an alien threat from beyond the stars, people need someone to blame, and that target becomes the very symbol they once praised. But like I mentioned earlier, it's Rosyu who truly gets put through the ringer. Now bearing the weight of the world's fear and desperation, he believes the only way to restore some fragile sense of order, to buy humanity even a sliver of hope, is through sacrifice. Someone has to take the fall, and that someone is Simon, the Supreme Commander himself. One of the most devastatingly powerful visuals in the entire show happens here. Kamina's statue being torn down, a monument once meant to inspire, to remind everyone of what it means to fight back against fate, is now treated with contempt. The world now viewing it as the symbol of the very recklessness that might destroy them. It's gorgeous in a heartbreaking way. The very themes that once defined Gurren Lagann, piercing the heavens, never giving up, pushing forward, are now turned inside out. Hope is met with disdain, spirit is replaced with dread. The contrast in tone is jarring and brilliantly executed. And Rosyu, he's no longer just a pragmatic voice of reason. He starts repeating the same logic that once disgusted him and made him want to leave the village in the first place. Sacrifice equals survival. The moment he says Kamina's death made them stronger, with the same hollow expression mocking Wurenadai village, I lost my entire shit. The parallel isn't just clever, it's surgical. The same ideological clash between Majin and Kamina now replaced itself but on a cosmic scale. Back then, it was 50 people in a religious village. Now, it's 1 million souls in a modern civilization on the brink of destruction. The scale has changed, but the core dilemma remains, and that's where the line between Simon and Rosyu becomes a whole gorge. Trust between them is practically non-existent at this point. Simon is subjected to a sham trial, not for justice, but for appeasement. A performance to soothe a terrified world, but in the midst of that storm, Simon doesn't scream or protest. He just closes his eyes and wonders, what would Kamina do if he were in my shoes? I don't think it was a coincidence that right in that moment, Nia appears again, telling Simon to meet his end and fall into despair. And neither did Simon, but we'll get into that later. For now, Simon uses Gurren Lagann one final time, Rosyu strapping a literal bomb to it, with Kinon riding alongside him to take down more anti-spiral mechas. Rosyu was willing to send not just Simon but Kitan's own sister into what could have been a suicide mission. Even if she volunteered, which she admits later, the fact that Rosyu accepted to do this is fucked up to say the least. And worse, he uses it to boost the people's trust in him. Simon is imprisoned awaiting sentencing, and there he meets Viral again, who's been behind bars since the start of the time skip, which funny enough, his arrest is the first time we see glimpses of this new Rosyu turned cold. And now, Rosyu is officially the new Supreme Commander. Now remember when I called this stretch of episodes the Noah's Ark Dilemma? Rosyu uncovers Lord Genome's ultimate contingency plan, a massive vessel called the Ark Gurren. I'm not going to make the claim that this is just a pure biblical inspiration or even that it was deliberately done, as I'm new to the mecha genre and there's a bunch of things Gurren Lagann might have taken inspiration from that I am completely unaware of, but personally, I couldn't ignore the parallels, especially considering Rosyu's religious background and the thematic through line starting all the way back in Adai village. And then there's the 20th episode title, Oh God, How Far Will You Test Us? It's in that same episode where we find out the 36 underground shelters built for surviving the moon's impact will actually not be able to survive. The earth won't just suffer a cataclysm, it'll become uninhabitable for an entire year. To put into perspective, that's more than double the time the biblical flood made the world uninhabitable. But here's the twist. In the story of Noah, everyone could have gotten on the ark, they just didn't believe the flood would happen. Here, everyone believes the moon is crashing because the moon is visibly growing larger in the sky every day, but the Ark Gurren can carry 1 million people. So now, Rosyu, who once fled a village that sacrificed the few to save the many, is forced into the opposite position, potentially sacrificing the many to save the few. The irony is absolutely gut-wrenching. And just when you think the irony is done, there's even more. Simon, who spent his life fighting the Beastmen for humanity's freedom, is now incarcerated alongside them, including Viral, who basically turns into his neighbor in jail. And when Nia reappears again, attempting to jab that final nail of despair into Simon's soul, and reveals that Rosyu has turned his back on humanity that remains on Earth, who returns? Yoko. And she shoots close to Nia, just like she did years ago when she overcame her own doubts about her. The visual parallel is undeniable for me, and the payoff had me running around my room from the hype. With Rosyu and only 176,800 people aboard Ark Gurren, less than half of the planned amount of people, Team Gurren returns to the stage. And this time, it's Simon and Viral who pilot Gurren Lagann. Even though Simon and the rest are no longer part of the official government, the spirit of Team Gurren transcends politics. They're not figureheads. They're the embodiment of risking everything to protect what matters. That's something Rosyu, now burdened by his role as Supreme Commander, just can't bring himself to do. And so, for the very first time in the series, the theme of piercing the heavens isn't just symbolic, it's literal. Now, I'm not a power scaler and I doubt I'll ever call myself one, but even I have to admit the sheer scale of this battle is absolutely insane. Gurren Lagann jumps into a complete new tier of power here, merging with Ark Gurren in one of the most jaw-dropping transformations in the entire show. To hell with your combine plays again, and the space-time shattering punch delivered to the massive Mugen is one of the most cathartic moments I've ever experienced in anime. And then, the moon. Seeing the face on it, realizing it was actually a flagship once under Lord Genome's control, hijacked by the anti-spirals, I got complete goosebumps. And yet, even as the tide starts to turn, Rosyu prepares to disengage Ark Gurren a full minute before the moon's impact. Despite everything Team Gurren has done to buy humanity a chance, he still can't believe it'll work. It's heartbreaking to watch how deeply he's drowned in despair, so much so that even hope itself doesn't move him anymore. But just as Gurren Lagann is about to connect the drill to the moon, Nia appears again. She tells Simon that despair cuts the deepest when hope seems just within reach, only to slip away. And honestly, when you take a step back, everything in this time skip has been building to this elaborate push-pull of hope and despair. But Simon isn't shaken, he calls it out. Every time humanity's been cornered, she's been there. Not just as a messenger of hell, but as a motivator. And then he even points out the ring. The ring Simon gave her not too long ago, still on her finger. Even in court, he noticed it. If everything about her past was fabricated like she claimed, why does she still cling to something so deeply tied to her connection with Simon? Why does she keep showing up when she knows how far he'll go to defy the odds? Why? Because she's been asking for help from Simon the entire time. And the moment he pierces the moon with his drill, she moves out of the way. That's the answer. Victory once again. Cathedral Terra is now under their control. Humanity is saved from total extinction. But like every major win in Gurren Lagann, it comes at a price. When Team Gurren first seized Daigunzan, Kamina died. When Simon defeated Lord Genome, it ushered in a new age, but also an extraterrestrial threat. Now, after saving Earth from being obliterated by the moon, the anti-spiral is going to prepare for a full-on war. Nia will be taken for analysis, and in a heartbreaking moment, the old Nia flickers through, quietly asking if Simon will come get to her. Even in victory, there's something that is kept from them to give them closure. And this time, humanity was inches from annihilation. Rosyu nearly abandoned ship. That ship being hope. That's why, in my opinion, this victory isn't as triumphant as it is bitter, because the fight isn't over and now Rosyu is left to pick up the broken pieces of himself. Episode 23 is easily one of my favorite episodes in all of anime. The full circle moment here is nothing short of incredible. The anti-spirals have remained untouchable, terrorizing spiral beings from a stronghold no one could ever reach. But while the world prepares for the next phase, Rosyu vanishes. Where to? Adai Village, the place where everything began for him. He meets Magin again, hands him the book. The conversation is light, but there's something off. Kinon received an email from Rosyu, a set of plans for what to do post Moonfall, with a strange message at the end. A suicide note. The tension climbs fast. The guilt Rosyu feels from everything, the betrayal, the panic, the fallout, it's eating him alive. As Simone and Kinon scramble to find him, they trace the signal, but it's wrong. Rosyu's gone deeper into the village, alone, lying to Magin with the excuse of an investigation. Simone floors it to her Adai as Rosyu prepares to do the unthinkable. Even with everything Rosyu has done, even with how much I hated him at this point, you don't want him to go out like this. You feel for him. Then, just when you think Simone hasn't already done the impossible enough, he does it again. He achieves teleportation. Kinon is horrified at the scene as Simone jumps out of Gurren Lagann, grit those teeth, punches Rosyu, just like Kamina did to him. Let that sink in. Episode 5 introduced Rosyu and the future he was headed toward mentally. Episode 8 broke Simone. Episode 11 rebuilt him. And episode 23 is the moment we see the result. Simone didn't become Kamina. He became Simone, the version of himself that could reach into the same void of despair he once fell into and pull someone else out of it. This wasn't just emotional closure, it was proof that Simone had transcended Kamina's shadow for me, not by replacing him, but by carrying his spirit forward in his own way. Because of this very emotional development, this is how Team Daiguren now have a chance to bring the fight to the anti-spiral. Because of teleportation. It's moments like this that remind me exactly why I love this medium. And with the emotional pieces locked in, the final battle isn't coming to Team Daiguren, they're bringing the battle to the anti-spiral, just like they always have. I know a lot of you guys watching this video are wondering, when does this guy talk about how Gurren Lagann changed them? Here's the thing, it didn't. But that's the beauty of it, and I'll explain that in a few. The final battle against the anti-spiral is nothing short of spectacular. If you ever wonder why most of Team Daiguren made it past the time skip, this battle is your answer, because now these sacrifices come, one after another, each one more painful, more earned, and more human. There's something bone-chilling about watching those skull statue-like anti-spiral mechas just appear and try to erase everything. On one side, humanity, messy, loud, flawed. On the other is just emptiness and void. And still, the indomitable human spirit refuses to die in this entire fight. Kitan's final charge, sacrificing himself to give Daiguren a chance to escape the spiral graveyard. Simone staring down the reality that spiral beings could literally end the universe with a black hole, and still choosing to move forward. For Nia, a virtual being of the anti-spiral, defies him. Why? Because she's seen how far humanity can go. Lord Genome, reborn as a biocomputer, gets a second chance, not to conquer, not to maintain the status quo, but to fight for something, to do what he couldn't do in the war so long ago, to take down the anti-spiral. Everything paid off, every arc, every line, every sacrifice. This final battle was something that left such an impact on me, and that carried forward in my personal life. Because I didn't watch Gurren Lagann in a vacuum. I watched it during one of the darkest periods of my life. I was struggling in college, depression had me in a very serious chokehold. I wasn't just procrastinating on what I had to do, I didn't even have the energy for what I wanted to do. Some days, I couldn't get out of bed for hours. I hated everything about my life and myself. I was barely holding it together in 2 of my classes. The third, a fucking nightmare. I kept failing every exam. The year before, I had already withdrawn from the same class. This time, I couldn't. It was too late. And then came the moment, my last shot. A makeup exam that would replace my worst grade. I could either give up or try. The catch? I was told I needed an 80 to pass. Not a 70, not a mercy grade, an 80. In a class where I hadn't even scored a 70 on an exam before. And I had 6 days, 3 of which got swallowed by unexpected shifts at work. I had to study with that time remaining, and because of that, I was spiraling, no pun intended. I couldn't eat. I was anxious 24/7. I was exhausted from trying to fix months of damage in less than a week. I started second guessing everything. What if I don't get an 80? What if I fail again? I wanted to quit, to cut my losses, to try again later. But then I told myself something that, funny enough, I still remember vividly. If I'm going to fail for the first time, then I'd rather fail standing up. I didn't want to quit. I didn't want to give up on myself. So, the exam day came, 5 a.m., anxiety crushing my chest. I laid there for about 10 minutes in that bed, still doubting if I wanted to do it. But I got up. I walked into that cold, spacious exam room, just me, a pencil, and a calculator, and I went to work. And an hour and a half later, I turned in my test. Still anxious, still unsure, but done. 3 days passed after that, and I was checking my grade obsessively, and in that third day, I saw it. The F, what could have been my final grade, turned into a C. I passed. Despite everything, despite depression, despite the idea of failure, despite my own doubts screaming at me, I did it. And Gurren Lagann didn't magically fix me. I still have depression. I still have low self-esteem. I still struggle to get out of bed sometimes. But that's what makes this show so beautiful. It doesn't tell you that you need to be perfect. It tells you that even with those flaws, you can still do what you think is impossible. Even when every voice, including your own, is telling you to give up. Even when the anti-spiral in your head says there's no future. I couldn't help but look at what I went through and not be reminded of that battle. Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann versus the anti-spiral. Hell, Super Tengen Toppa Gurren Lagann from the second movie. It wasn't just an anime anymore, as cringy as that sounds. It was a reminder. A reminder that when you move forward, when you aim for the future that you want, even when nothing seems to go your way, you become that spiral, that drill, that force of will that pierces through despair. The anti-spiral was my depression, and every scene of that battle told me, you are not alone, and this is not the end. Everyone in Gurren was trapped in dream worlds built by doubt. The only way out was willpower, not logic, not perfection, just the refusal to quit. And in the soul of every one of them, there was that drill. The one thing the anti-spiral feared. Gurren Lagann didn't change me. It reminded me of who I could be, even when I didn't believe it. In a world that seems to fall apart more every day, a show like this, about pushing forward no matter what, resonates. Not just with your mind, with your soul. And that's how Gurren Lagann, in his message of hope, in piercing the heavens, pierced my life. And with that, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of the day wherever you are. See you guys next time.